Women have never had it so easy.
Well, we haven't. I mean, when I was graduating in the 1970s, it was perfectly lawful for an employer to advertise a job, and underneath it would be two rates of pay, one for men and one for women. It was lawful for that employer to say, we don't take women. It was lawful to refuse a woman a mortgage, a property to rent, a finance agreement, just because she was a woman. And you could say that was why you were refusing it. Now, the feminists of those days were shouting out, give us equality, give us a level playing field, we'll show you we're as good as, if not better than the men. In the 90s, that all changed. And instead of being about, we want a level playing field, it was, we want a tilted playing field towards us. We want all women shortlists, we want quotas. And so it's gone on until now you've got the whinging even of the Me Too movement, and I'm not talking about the more serious cases, but where a woman will say, oh, 5 years ago, you know, a man put his arm around me and you know, I didn't want it and it made me terribly uncomfortable. We've started to look for sources of grievance because effectively we have one. And the women I'm sorry for, if I can just say, there's one group of women I don't think of one, and those are the women who want to be full-time mothers. That's their choice. And they're heavily discriminated against in the tax system, for a start, and by society in general, who seem to say, well, that's a second-class occupation. We have the recent example of Sam Cameron saying that when she tentatively suggested to David that maybe she'd be a full-time mother, he didn't like the idea at all.
So you say that the playing field has tilted towards
Heavily
women.
towards us.
Well, many women would say that that's just not the case, that that's just not true, that that pay gap that you've talked about is still very relevant today. It might not be advertised on brochures, but it's more underhand, it's more sort of secretively going on.
The pay gap is very largely, not entirely, but very largely a myth. Because if you look at the overall statistics, one of the reasons why women come out less well is that they tend to do more part-time work. Part-timers tend to be women. They tend to take time off to have children, sometimes repeatedly so. So inevitably, that has an impact on pay. When it comes to the more esoteric pay gaps that we've seen, such as in the media, you know, well, the male presenter gets more than the female or whatever it may be.
We're paid the same.
When you actually, yeah, well done. When you actually start looking at it, it's very often the case that the male's been there that longer, that he's had a higher profile, that something's happened. So I don't actually buy into what you're saying. And when you say it hasn't tilted, an all-woman shortlist means this, that a man can't compete. It's discrimination against the men. So in my walk of life, for example, which used to be politics, a man who's grown up in a constituency, brought his own kids up there, knows it backwards, good record there, can't actually stand because it's an all-women shortlist. That is wrong.
You're saying also that men are wimps.
Well, men are wimps because you've put up with it. Why do you put up with it, Philip? I mean, you know, we didn't put up with it. I mean, we did fight in the end. Took us a while, but we did fight in the end. But everywhere you look, in the family courts, men are at a disadvantage. When it comes to allegations, they can be named. The woman isn't. They're at a disadvantage. All women shortlists, they're at a disadvantage. Quotas, they're at a disadvantage. And I've seen this close up when we had a selection for my successor, and we were told right from the outset, we had to have an equal number of men and women on the shortlist, despite the fact there weren't an equal number of men and women applying.
The hashtag #MeToo movement that you were talking about earlier on there, hasn't that given women a voice finally, one that has been suppressed for such a long time, one that needed to come out, that actually globally has made such a huge difference?
No, I do not believe that. As I say, that, I'm about to tell you, if you just have the patience. Are you auditioning for John Humphrey's job or something?
No, I'm just
I once asked him if he was paid by the interruption. I don't actually think that it has achieved anything except in, and I said that right at the start, you heard me say it earlier, except in the serious cases, they did need support, and that's fine. But it's also given rise to a lot of very trivial whinging. I mean, you've got recently an academic doctor, you know, not a doctor, but somebody with a DPhil or a PhD, complaining because at an airport, instead of being referred to as Dr. Smith, she was referred to as Mrs. Smith. Well, get a life, girls. Get a life.
But I would say that the hashtag #MeToo movement is a bit stronger than that, isn't it? It's not, I think...
I've already conceded the serious cases. You heard me say that.
But
there's also been a lot
people
of
who
trivia.
say
But what it's done, though, is
they
been a
were
lot
all
of
serious
trivia.
cases.
It has, yes,
No, they're not all
but
serious.
amongst that
Man puts his
trivia...
arm round you, that's not a serious case.
Amongst that trivia, there have been, and you, which you call trivia,
I do
those,
put that. Hang
those
on.
women would say.
Let's decide.
No, my turn.
No,
those women would say that. Hang on a second. It wasn't trivial to me, and human beings react in different ways, and what is trivial to you is actually something that did deeply affect someone. If there hadn't been Me Too, if women hadn't come forward, Bill Cosby last night wouldn't have been put behind bars.
That was serious. But that was serious, and I mean, I'm not defending people who've done serious things. What I'm saying is there's a lot of trivia. I mean, there's even now a serious proposal, heaven help us, to make wolf whistling a crime. I mean, have we gone mad? Have we gone absolutely mad? And what that indicates is we have won, and instead of sitting back and saying, we've won, now we're going to build on that, we're saying, oh dear, we mustn't win. We've got to find other causes of grievance. And it really makes me very, very weary. And I think it's making it a tough world for the likes of you. If you put your arm around me, I can say, oh dear, I'm traumatised. If I put my arm around you, nobody would pay 2 minutes worth of attention if you said, oh dear, you were traumatised.
And one of the other lines you say is that women want to be victimised.
Well, certainly that is the impression that women are giving now. I mean, I don't know that I've ever said women in general want to be victimised, because I don't think we do. But I think there is a cult of victimhood going on, whereby very trivial things that don't matter, I mean, wolf whistling doesn't matter. I quite like it, actually. Really doesn't matter. We've lost our sense of humour. We've lost our cheeriness. We've lost our sense of proportion. It's making for a horrible world.